Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Thank you. Question for each president. President Trump, you first. Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe? My second question is, would you now, with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server.
What?
Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server. But I have confidence in both parties. I really believe that this will probably go on for a while, but I don't think it can go on without finding out what happened to the server. What happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentlemen that worked on the DNC? Where are those servers? They're missing. Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? 33,000 emails, gone, just gone. I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace that we can't get Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer. Okay, thank you.
He's a jackass.
Holy crap. Did you see that, everybody? Did you see that? The President of the United States picked Vladimir Putin over the Senate Intelligence Committee, over the Intel community, over the FBI, over the indictment that we got to read to you on Friday that clearly names names of Russian intelligence officers reporting directly to Vladimir Putin, and that those Russian intelligence officers were communicating with various right-wing pundits and bloggers in this country and trying to get them to spread what they stole from the DCCC, which is the Congressional Campaign Committee for the Democrats, and from the DNC, which is the National Committee for the Democrats. And that, we know Roger Stone, it was only 24, but we know that, all these bloggers, all these journalists, so they call themselves, were receiving direct messages from Guccifer 2.0, who is a Russian intelligence agent, who was saying, and they were requesting stuff from Russian intel. The Americans were requesting stuff. So did Donald Trump. He said, Russia, if you're listening. And that was the day that they actually started to hack Hillary Clinton. That was June 27th. My God, man. What the? And he stood next to a freaking murdering son of a bitch who invades his own neighbors, who, is in violation of the nuclear treaties that we signed. He's got mid-range nuclear missiles. He actually conducted tests on them recently. He gassed, kids in Syria. He poisoned British citizens with Novichok, and the president is siding with him over everything that we know. And we know so much. We know that Russia orchestrated this information. We know that they stole it. we're just now finding out about an untold story with regard to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and that the Russians hacked into dozens of House races, dozens of them. I mean, this is why you have to follow me on Twitter, because Friday I just couldn't stop. I was finding out more and more and more as I, finished up this indictment. We read most of it on the air, but there was still a little bit left. And so when I got off the air, I went home and I started looking, and I found, what exactly they did in the congressional House races, and that Paul Ryan had actually agreed through his spokesperson, Ashley Strong, that Paul Ryan knew that he was receiving and using stolen, hacked material to help his, GOP counterparts in their races in 2016. And this was all done, all over the country. It was done in Pennsylvania. They hacked in New Hampshire, in Ohio, in Illinois, in New Mexico, North Carolina. All of these states traced, they can now be traced to the tens of thousands of pages of documents that were taken from the DCCC. Guccifer was literally talking to Fox News and to right-wing bloggers and to right-wing newspapers and fake sites all across the United States. Guccifer actually wrote, quote, "It's time for new revelations now." And then he started to pass out the DCCC documents that they stole, that the Russian intelligence officers stole, and they were trying to entice reporters to look at them on their own. Guccifer, who we now know is Russian intelligence, said, "All of you may have heard about the DCCC hack. As you see, I wasn't wasting my time. It was even easier than in the case of the DNC breach." And he wanted reporters to cover it. And these right-wing bloggers were direct messaging with him saying, okay, and this was back in March and April. And Nancy Pelosi knew that they had been hacked. The DCCC knew that they had been hacked. And she wrote a letter to the FBI and said that they were the target of a cybersecurity intrusion, an electronic Watergate break-in, she wrote. The Guccifer started to release personal information on these House candidates, okay? And she wrote in this email that she sent to the FBI, she called the state troopers, she called the sergeant at arms in the House, right? The guy that goes, "Mr. Speaker, the president," right? She called him. And she wrote, "It has been widely reported that the cybersecurity incident is part of a Russian cyber attack, which appears to be an attempt to interfere with our elections. We take this troubling situation very seriously, have notified the appropriate authorities, including the FBI and the sergeant at arms. State troopers were sent to the homes of House Democrats across the United States, and they were urged to immediately change their cell phone numbers, change your personal email addresses, although that happened after they started receiving threatening and obscene phone calls, these candidates for the House and members of the House." And then Guccifer 2.0 follows up with the release of their personal data with large caches of internal party documents. For instance, here in South Florida, there was a primary between two Democrats. One Democrat's name was Miss Tadeo. I believe she's the state senator currently. And the other one is a guy named Mr. Garcia. And Garcia had been a House member. He'd been a congressman, and he'd been thrown out of Congress. And then he wanted to get back in. So he was running in a primary against Tadeo. And so that was one of the most competitive House races in the country. And so Tadeo was in a primary. Although the seat is held by a Republican, the district that she's running in is District 26. It leans Democrat, and Hillary Clinton won in 2016 by a very large majority. Well, to prepare for the race, the DCCC had done candidate evaluations of the two in the primary, Garcia and Tadeo, and the inside documents bluntly described each candidate's weaknesses, which is very routine. So you can vet who you want to support. You can vet who gets the DCCC money, right? One of the internal documents that was hacked said Miss Tadeo had proven to be a somewhat poor fundraiser, and she's gained a reputation as an inadequate campaigner among some of the talkers in the community. In the August primary in 2016, Joe Garcia also made a large misstep, and this was in the document too, saying that he had been on the campaign trail saying communism works, which did not sit well with the large Cuban refugee population. More embarrassingly, Mr. Garcia was caught on a C-SPAN feed picking his earwax and eating it. Yeah, I mean, that thing went viral. I mean, it was all, for those who love political, humor. Yes, you could see that. You could look that up. Joe Garcia was sitting there, and he was going like this in a hearing, right? It's going like this, and then he looks at it, puts it in his mouth, and he, uses his teeth to get the earwax off the fingernail. So, but Mr. Garcia actually used the material. He actually did use the Russian hacked material against Miss Tadeo. He actually went to their debate, which nobody watched, in the ahead of the primary in 2016 in August. We'll have another primary in August here in 2018, okay? And he went with a printout of these Russian documents. And he started accusing Miss Tadeo, of hiring a private detective to follow him because they had all this information, but it was really just the DCCC, and the DCCC had been hacked, and he had been given copies. Now, Tadeo lost to Garcia, and Garcia ran against Curbiello, the Republican, and the Republican won. And Paul Ryan has subsequently said, through his spokeswoman, Ashley Strong, that he knew, because he gave these documents to Curbiello also, and he said that he knew that he was using stolen documents in that race. He said he knew that he had turned to the hacked material to attack Mr. Garcia. Here in Florida also, Guccifer 2.0, the most important partner that Russian intelligence had was a website, an obscure website run by an anonymous blogger who is really a lobbyist. He calls the blog Hello Fla, F-L-A, exclamation point, which tells you something about Jeb. Okay, just, only Jeb would run that way. Jeb, exclamation point. Anyway, this guy was a former legislative aide in the Florida state legislature, and now he's a Republican lobbyist. And he sent direct messages through Twitter to Guccifer, asking for copies of more documents having to do with Florida elections that Guccifer, the Russian intel guy, hacked from the DCCC. And Guccifer replies. He says, I can send you some docs via email on August 22nd, according to a cell phone screenshot of the message that the blogger, this lobbyist who writes under a pen name named Mark Meward, gave to the New York Times. I guess he's got scared. But he wrote, great. I'm just getting my kid from school, but I'll be able to get it up pretty quick after I get it. Thanks. And then a blogger, I did that. And then a blogger who anonymously runs Hello Florida contacted hackers working under the made-up name of Guccifer 2.0. And he said, Guccifer writes back to him, and he goes, do you have a size limit? Meaning, how big a file can you accept? The Florida lobbyist said, I'm going to set up a Dropbox. And he sets up a Dropbox so he could take thousands of pages of stolen information from Russian intelligence. Data that this lobbyist realized would have been super expensive for the Republicans to have gotten on their own. He actually writes to Russian intelligence, to Guccifer 2.0, I don't think you realize what you gave me. This is probably worth millions of dollars. Gee, something of value taken in an election and not declared from a foreign entity that is Russian intelligence acting at the behest of Vladimir Putin. Then, that was all in August. Then in September, Guccifer released documents to include House races in Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Ohio, Illinois, North Carolina, through a website called Miscellany Blue. Also, Ben Lujan in New Mexico, even though he didn't even have an opponent, and he was the chairman of the DCCC. He was part of the stolen documents too. They wanted to try to hurt Democrats in leadership, so they went after him too. And our president stood there today and said he believes Vladimir Putin.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Why should Americans and why should President Trump believe your statement that Russia did not intervene in the 2016 election, given the evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies have provided? And will you consider extraditing the 12 Russian officials that were indicted last week by a U.S. grand jury?
Well, I'm going to let the president answer the second part of that question.
The whole thing was for
him. As you know, the whole concept of that came up perhaps a little bit before, but it came out as a reason why the Democrats lost an election, which, frankly, they should have been able to win because the Electoral College is much more advantageous for Democrats, as you know, than it is to Republicans.
What?
We won the Electoral College by a lot, 306 to 223, I believe.
Oh, my God.
And that was a well-fought battle. We did a great job. And frankly, I'm going to let the president speak to the second part of your question. But just to say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion. I didn't know the president. There was nobody to collude with. There was no collusion with the campaign. And every time you hear all of these, 12 and 14, it's stuff that has nothing to do. And frankly, they admit these are not people involved in the campaign. But to the average reader out there, they're saying, well, maybe that does. It doesn't. And even the people involved, some perhaps told mis-stories, although in one case the FBI said there was no lie. There was no lie. What? Somebody else said there was. We ran a brilliant campaign, and that's why I'm president. Thank you.
This was really stunning. This was treasonous. This was really heinous. This was really, really the most. It is a literal refusal to protect and defend the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. That question wasn't even for him, and he has to go and do that stump speech again about his Electoral College victory, where he won. He lies so often. I mean, that's just not true. Ronald Reagan won every state except for the home state of what's his face? Minnesota. You know what I mean? I don't even understand what he's talking about. Nobody does, and it's just so sick. He says I had nobody to collude with. I didn't even know him.
I never met Putin. As an example, I own the Miss Universe. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer.
What exactly is your relationship with Vladimir Putin?
I have no relationship with Putin. I have no relationship.
You have a relationship with Vladimir Putin, a conversational relationship, or anything that you feel you have sway or influence over his government?
I do have a relationship, and I can tell you that he's very interested in what we're doing here today. He's probably very interested in what you and I are saying today, and I'm sure he's going to be seeing it in some form.
But I just want to clear this up, because you did say on 3 different occasions you had a relationship with him. Now you say there is none.
Well, I don't know what it means by having a relationship. I mean, he was saying very good things about me, but I don't have a relationship with him. I didn't meet him. I haven't spent time with him. I didn't have dinner with him. I didn't go hiking with him. I don't know. I wouldn't know him from Adam, except I see his picture and I would know what he looks like. I was in Moscow a couple of months ago. I owned the Miss Universe pageant, and they treated me so great. Putin even sent me a present, beautiful present with a beautiful note. I spoke to all of his people. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. I have nothing to do with Russia. Nothing to do. I never met Putin. Nothing to do with Russia whatsoever.
So you have no loans from Russian banks or investors?
Absolutely not. far as the Ukraine is concerned, and you could say Syria, as far as Syria, I like if Putin wants to go in, and I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. We were stablemates, and we did very well that night. But you know that.
We did 60 Minutes together. By the way, not together, meaning he was probably shot in Moscow.
Well, he was in Moscow, you were in New York. But that's the thing.
No, just so you understand, he said very nice things about me, but I have no relationship with him.
Yeah, you said for 3 years, 13, 14, and 15, that you did have a relationship with him.
No, look, what do you call a relationship? I mean, he treats me with great respect. I have no relationship with Putin. I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I don't think I've ever met him.
You would know it if you did, wouldn't you?
I think so, yeah, I think so. I don't think I've ever met him. I mean, if he's in the same room or something, but I don't think so.
Never spoken to him on the phone?
I've been in Moscow. I didn't meet him in Moscow. Where?
Never spoken to him on the phone?
I have never spoken to him on the phone, no. I've spoken when we had the Miss Universe contest a number of years ago. We had Miss Universe in Moscow, in the Moscow area. He was invited. He wanted to come. He wasn't able to come. That would have been a time when I would have met him.
Oh, my freaking God. All right. So today, they asked Vladimir Putin about, whether or not Vladimir Putin has dirt on Donald Trump. And Putin says he didn't even know that Donald Trump was in Moscow for the Miss Universe pageant at the time. So the two of them are just lying and holding on to each other. This was the sickest thing I ever saw.
Can you tell me what President Trump may have indicated to you about officially recognizing Crimea as part of Russia? And then secondly, sir, does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
Okay.
President Trump and posture of President Trump on Crimea is well known, and he stands firmly by it. He continued to maintain that it was illegal to annex it. Our viewpoint is different. We held a referendum in strict compliance with the UN Charter and the international legislation. For us, this issue, we put paid to this issue. And now to the compromising material. Yeah, I did heard these rumors that we allegedly collected compromising material on Mr. Trump when he was visiting Moscow. Well, distinguished colleague, let me tell you this. When President Trump visited Moscow back then, I didn't even know that he was in Moscow. I treat President Trump with utmost respect. But back then, when he was a private individual, a businessman, nobody informed me that he was in Moscow. Well, let's take St. Petersburg Economic Forum, for instance. There were over 500 American businessmen, the high-ranking, the high-level ones. I don't even remember the last names of each and every one of them. Well, do you think that we try to collect compromising material on each and every single one of them? Well, it's difficult to imagine another nonsense of a bigger scale than this. Well, please just disregard these issues and don't think about this anymore again.
And I have to say, if they had it, it would have been out long ago. And if anybody watched Peter Strzok testify over the last couple of days, and I was in Brussels watching it, it was a disgrace to the FBI. It was a disgrace to our country. And you would say that was a total witch hunt. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
It's a total witch hunt. Putin lied just there. Okay, so if there are any Americans that wonder, does Putin lie to his own people? Does Putin, did Putin tell? No, Putin actually kills people that disagree with him, is what it is. Putin actually jails people that expose his crimes, and then they end up dead in jail. Putin, he's got a country where people just, fall out the window moving a bathtub by themselves. He's got a country where, oh my God, this man touched his doorknob and now he's dead from a chemical agent known as Novichok that's only produced in Russia. And then, there's residual collateral damage from other people who touched the doorknob where Mr. Skripal was targeted. And then, you get your old-fashioned polonium stuff, right? What was his name? Livchenko. Yeah, he just did. He died slow and miserably, you know. But Trump trusts him. The two of them are. We don't know each other. I had nobody to collude with. Oh, I didn't even know Donald Trump was in Moscow. I had no idea he was here. Oh, he couldn't have been nicer. In fact, when we had Miss Universe, he sent me a beautiful present with such a nice note. No, I didn't even know he was here. Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, this was really scary. This was really sick. I have never seen anything like this in my life. I have never seen a president of the United States say things like, Europe is our enemy and Vladimir Putin is our friend. And he also digs Kim Jong-un a lot. We got along great. And, they've already returned our remains. I mean, that's already... And none of it is true. But then to stand on a stage next to one of the world's worst dictators who does murder people, who does not have a free press, who literally, keeps his people living on $450 a week while every single oligarch in his country makes billions of dollars and kicks back half of it to Vladimir Putin, which is why it's so corrupt. This is just a sick thing. We know all these things, okay? Let's go back to 2008. We know in 2008, Junior said about the Trump organization's money, quote, Russians make up a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of our assets. Then in 2014, butthead, you got the two of them, right? Eric Trump says, we don't rely on American banks. We have all the funding we need out of Russia. 2003 to 17, we know that buyers connected to Russia made 86 all-cash sales of Trump real estate properties, mostly in Florida and New York. 86 all-cash purchases in Trump-branded properties in Florida and New York. And we know that, nobody lives in them. We know that Trump sold his house to a Russian oligarch for 10 times what he paid for it. And the man never even set foot in it before he bought it. And then he tore it down because he didn't want to repair it. It was in such disrepair. But for some reason, he thought it was worth, 5 times what it was really worth in Palm Beach. We also know that Manafort and Jared Kushner and Junior took a meeting with Russian operatives promising dirt on Hillary Clinton, and we know that Trump lied about the purpose of that meeting and then lied about lying about it. We know that Trump sat on went on the television and said, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you could find the 33,000 emails. I think our press will reward you mightily, getting the interest of the right-wing press and the right-wing bloggers who then are approached on social media by Guccifer 2.0 and invited to direct message with him. And he's then saying, open up a Dropbox because these are a lot of files. I got tens of thousands of documents we stole from the DCCC for these congressional races in 2016. It's not just the presidential. We got the congressional races too. So do a Dropbox because these are big files. It's big. And they do it. And we know that the day he said, Russia, if you're listening, July 27th, is the day that Russia then started hacking Hillary Clinton. The exact day. We know that Russia, stole. We know that they hacked. And we know that information... Oh, and by the way, today they asked Vladimir Putin if he wanted Donald Trump to win.
Did you want
Legal
President
framework.
Trump to win the election? And did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because he talked about bringing the U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Here's Donald Trump.
If Hillary had won, our military would be decimated. Our energy would be much more expensive. That's what Putin doesn't like about me. And that's why I say, why would he want me? Because from day one, I wanted a strong military. He doesn't want to see that. And from day one, I want fracking and everything else to get energy prices low and to create tremendous energy. We're going to be self-supporting. We just about are now. We're going to be exporting energy. He doesn't want that. He would like Hillary, where she wants to have windmills.
Is that right, huh?
Did you want
Legal
President
framework.
Trump to win the election? And did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because he talked about bringing the U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
Nobody's been tougher on Russia than me. Nobody. This was really sick. This was, and by the way, I have to tell you, I think this was a breaking point for, I would like to say for the entire GOP, but I can't. But I will say that statements did come out almost immediately from Paul Ryan, from Cornyn in Texas, from John McCain, from Ben Sass in Nebraska, from Liz Cheney in Wyoming, from Bob Corker in Tennessee, from Jeff Flake, from Kinzinger in, where is Kinzinger? I think he's in Illinois. From Orrin Hatch in Utah, though it was mild, just like everything Orrin does. I imagine having sex with him is kind of like that, too. But from Frank Lobiondo in New Jersey. So it's not just the people that are not running again. It was a good chunk of the GOP who all put out statements saying this was a disgrace, this is unacceptable. McCain, I'll read you his. Go to RandyRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.